The afternoon started the way every weekday usually did. The sun hanging low enough to blast through the west-facing windows, the sound of sprinklers ticking across manicured lawns, and my daughter, Lily, trudging up the driveway after track practice with her backpack sliding down one shoulder. She was sweaty, red-faced, humming off-key, and in the kind of mood that only comes from running 3 miles under the supervision of a coach who believed fun and punishment were synonyms. To me, it was normal. To our neighborhood's self-appointed morality officer, it was apparently a crime. Karen appeared like she always did, suddenly, as if she had a siren sense for things that offended her. She lived 3 houses down but moved like she was patrolling a border. Short blonde bob, oversized sunglasses, clipboard tucked under her arm like a weapon. She never left home without that clipboard, and rumor had it she wrote down infractions as they happened. Recycling bins left out, paint colors she didn't like, unauthorized wind chimes. Today, though, her voice carried across the cul-de-sac like a church bell of doom. "Excuse me. Excuse me." She marched toward Lily with the kind of purpose usually reserved for fire marshals. "Young lady, this is a family neighborhood." Lily froze mid-step, confused. Hi." Karen jabbed a manicured finger toward her chest. "That shirt is completely inappropriate. I can see, you know, everything." Lily looked down at her plain gray practice t-shirt, stained with sweat, clinging in some spots. Then she looked back at Karen. "You mean because I'm not wearing a bra?" The horror on Karen's face could have qualified for an Oscar. "Exactly. We have standards here. Community standards. Modesty standards." I stepped onto the porch, already feeling my blood pressure spike. "Karen. She just came back from running. She's 16. She's tired. Maybe let her walk inside without commentary." Karen whipped toward me. "As a parent, you should know better. It's not just unsightly, it's dangerous. Men could be watching." "Then maybe men should mind their business," I shot back. Neighbors peeked through blinds. One man watering his roses set down his hose and casually disappeared behind his fence. Everyone knew Karen's crusades could stretch on for hours, and no one wanted to be collateral. Karen scribbled something onto her clipboard, muttering about decency and safety. I assumed that was the end of it. A nasty note slipped into our mailbox later, maybe, or a sanctimonious email to the HOA listserv. Annoying, but survivable. But Karen wasn't satisfied with tattling. The next evening, around dinner time, 2 men in black polo shirts and tactical pants showed up at our door. They had earpieces, holstered weapons, the kind of presence that makes you instantly aware of how quickly your heart can pound. My husband opened the door cautiously. "Can I help you?" One man, tall and stone-faced, flashed a badge from a private security company. "We've been dispatched on behalf of the Homeowners Association. There was a report of inappropriate conduct involving your daughter." I nearly choked on my pasta. Lily, sitting at the table, went pale. "What?" The shorter guard adjusted his belt, clearly uncomfortable. "We were told there was a situation requiring intervention. Possible exposure." My husband's jaw tightened. "You're here because my kid wore a t-shirt." The taller one shrugged like this was routine. "We just go where we're told." HOA president filed the request. "She said you might be hostile." "Hostile?" I stepped forward, my voice low and sharp. "Hostile is exactly what you're about to get if you don't leave my house." The guards exchanged glances. One muttered something about false alarm and not worth the headache. Still, the damage was done. They had shown up armed, on our doorstep, because Karen had decided my daughter's sports bra, or lack thereof, was a threat to community order. Lily sat silently through it all, her hands trembling under the table. Later, she asked if she had done something wrong, if she had somehow broken a rule. That question broke me more than the sight of the security team had. That night, we found Karen outside, talking to a knot of neighbors on her lawn, animated and loud. She spotted us and raised her voice even higher. "We can't allow this kind of indecency to fester. First it's no bras, then it's who knows what, strip clubs, drugs, crime. I wanted to laugh at the absurd leap, but Lily's face kept me silent. The neighborhood had become a stage, and Karen had cast herself as savior. We were her villains. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't going to fade with one angry conversation. She had escalated to force. Next, who knew? Police? Fines? Public shaming? As I tucked Lily into bed, she whispered, "Am I in trouble?" I smoothed her hair back. No, but Karen might be. And in that moment, standing in the quiet of her room while shadows stretched across the walls, I knew this was just the opening act. The real fight hadn't even started yet. The morning after the security guards came, our porch was littered with evidence that Karen's mouth worked overtime. Anonymous flyers, cheaply printed, grainy clip art of scales of justice, and bold capital letters, "Community decency under attack." The text accused us of neglecting parental responsibility and allowing minors to present indecently in common spaces. It was signed, predictably, the concerned citizens of Willow Creek HOA, as if anyone besides Karen had spent their Friday night designing moral propaganda. Lily crumpled one of the papers in her fist. "They're talking about me like I'm some criminal." My husband picked up another, shaking his head. "They didn't even spell indecency right in half of these." I tried to laugh. But watching Lily's shoulders curl forward as she backed into the kitchen told me humor wasn't going to cut it anymore. That evening, I marched down to the HOA office, a converted storage room by the community pool. The door was propped open. Karen sat behind a desk stacked with binders and coffee mugs that screamed "Boss Lady." She looked up and smiled like a cat spotting a cornered mouse. "Well," she purred, "I was wondering when you'd come by." "You sent armed men to my door," I said flatly. "We need to talk." Karen leaned back. "Correction. I requested a professional assessment of a potential threat. Entirely within my rights as president." "Threat?" My voice rose. "She's a teenage girl in a t-shirt." Her smile tightened. "And teenage girls can be very persuasive to certain types of men. My duty is to the safety of this neighborhood. If you can't control your daughter's attire, the association must step in." "Step in? Karen, she's not a hazard. She's a kid. Your obsession is the hazard." A voice from the corner startled me. A thin man in khakis, fiddling nervously with a stapler. For the record, I thought the security thing was overkill." Karen shot him a glare sharp enough to peel paint. "Thank you, Greg, but as treasurer you don't have final say on emergency protocols." Greg's eyes darted to mine, silently pleading for forgiveness. I turned back to Karen. "This stops now. No more flyers. No more security. No more harassment." Karen's grin widened. "Or what? You'll move? Families like yours rarely last here when they can't adapt to community culture." Her words sat heavy. It wasn't a threat of fines. It was exile. By Monday, the fallout had spread beyond the HOA bubble. At school, Lily walked into whispers. Someone had posted a picture of the flyer on Instagram, tagging her name. The caption read, "Guess who's Willow Creek scandal queen?" When I picked her up, she sat in the passenger seat with tears silently cutting tracks down her cheeks. "I didn't do anything wrong," she murmured. "I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles cracked." "You don't have to explain yourself. Not to me. Not to anyone." But kids can be crueler than Karens. By Tuesday, a group of boys had started humming "Here Comes the Sun" whenever she walked into class, mocking the supposed exposure. That night, she asked if we could transfer schools. My husband and I exchanged looks. Moving her wasn't just impractical. It would be letting Karen win. We weren't the only ones on the receiving end of Karen's wrath, though. Our neighbor, Jamal, stopped by with his toddler on his hip. "She got me last month," he confessed. "Claimed my basketball hoop was an eyesore. Threatened to fine me $200 unless I took it down." I frowned. "Did you fight it?" He laughed bitterly. "Single dad, 2 jobs. Didn't have the energy. Cheaper to give in." He shifted his son from one arm to the other. But sending security after your kid? That's new. The next day, I got a call from Officer Daniels at the local police department. His tone was clipped but embarrassed. We received a complaint of public indecent exposure involving your daughter. We're obligated to follow up, but, honestly, it's baseless. The report came from Ms. Karen Mitchell. Again. I asked. There was a pause. Yes. This isn't the first. She's filed reports about noise, lawn decorations, even alleged gang activity. None have ever held up. We'll close this one too, but you should know she's persistent. After I hung up, my husband slammed his fist lightly against the counter. She's not going to stop. She's trying to scare us out. He was right. And fear wasn't working, just hardening into rage. That weekend, we gathered at the dining table. Lily sat cross-legged, chewing on a pencil. If I just wore a hoodie every time I leave the house. No, I cut her off. You don't adjust to her insanity. She adjusts to reality. My husband nodded. So what's the play? Ignore her? Move? Or fight? The word fight hung in the air like a challenge. Lily surprised us both by answering first. Fight. Because if it's not me, it'll be someone else next. I stared at my daughter, the same girl who still watched cartoons on Saturday mornings, now steeling herself like a soldier. And I realized she was right. We spent the next week researching attorneys. Most laughed when we explained the situation. But one, Rosa Martinez, civil rights lawyer with a sharp bob and sharper wit, leaned forward in her chair and said, "This isn't about a t-shirt. This is about abuse of authority. And I love a bully takedown story." She laid out our options: a civil suit against the HOA for harassment, and possibly a personal case against Karen for defamation and emotional distress. It wouldn't be quick. It wouldn't be easy. But it would be public. Karen, of course, caught wind within days. She cornered me at the mailbox, lips thin, eyes gleaming. Going to waste your money on lawyers? Cute. You think you'll win sympathy, but this neighborhood knows who's decent and who isn't. I tilted my head. Then you won't mind when a judge gets to decide. Her smile faltered, just a flicker, before snapping back into place. For the first time, I saw it. Beneath the bluster, Karen wasn't invincible. She was afraid of exposure, the real kind. And that was the moment I knew we weren't just surviving her anymore. We were about to drag her fight out of the cul-de-sac and into the light. The lawsuit paperwork was barely dry when the first shockwave hit. A neighbor, bless them, though I still don't know who, had recorded the night the security guards showed up. The video was grainy, porch-light yellow, but it didn't need to be high definition. The footage of two armed men standing stiffly on our welcome mat, shifting uncomfortably as my daughter's voice cracked. What did I do wrong? That was enough. Someone uploaded it to TikTok with the caption, "HOA Karen called security because a teen didn't wear a bra." Within hours, it was everywhere. By morning, HOA Karen had a hashtag. By lunchtime, she had memes. My phone buzzed so relentlessly I had to silence it. News outlets left voicemails asking for comment. Influencers were stitching the video, acting out exaggerated Karen monologues with wigs and clipboards. Lily sat at the kitchen table scrolling, equal parts horrified and fascinated. "There's merch," she said flatly. She turned her phone to show me a t-shirt that read, "No BRA, no problem with a cartoon HOA house logo crossed out." I wanted to laugh, but the tears brimming in her eyes made me bite it back. Going viral wasn't a victory dance. It was a hurricane. Attorney Rosa was delighted, though. This kind of public interest? Gold. Judges don't live in bubbles. They'll know what this case means. Karen, on the other hand, went into overdrive. She called an emergency HOA meeting in the clubhouse. Word spread faster than wildfire, and when we walked in, the room was packed. Neighbors, reporters, even a couple of college kids live-streaming from the back. Karen stood at the podium in a floral blazer, eyes glittering. She slammed her gavel on the wood. "Order! Order! Please!" She launched into a speech that would have made a televangelist jealous. Our neighborhood has been infiltrated by indecency, disrespect, and lawlessness. These so-called victims are exploiting social media to tear apart our community values. The murmurs in the crowd weren't as supportive as she seemed to expect. A woman near the front whispered loudly to her husband, "She's lost it." Karen's dramatic finale was to hold up a binder nearly 2 inches thick. "Here," she declared, "are signed complaints from dozens of residents who support this association's standards." From the back, Jamal raised his hand. "Funny, I live across from you, and I never signed anything." Others nodded. Greg the treasurer, sweating bullets, muttered, "Actually, these, don't look official." Karen banged her gavel again, voice shrill. "This meeting is adjourned." "Adjourned," I said. The chaos only fueled the live streams. Clips hit Twitter within the hour, showing Karen clutching her binder while the crowd booed. Meanwhile, the HOA board began to fracture. 3 members resigned within days, citing ethical concerns. Emails leaked, screenshots bouncing around group chats, showing Karen had been sending directives without votes, inventing community rules that never existed in the bylaws. One email in particular went viral. "We cannot allow sloppiness. First visible nipples, next visible drugs. Nipples are the gateway to chaos." Lily showed me on her phone and snorted through tears. "I'm a gateway now." I hugged her tight. The best one they'll ever cross. But virality cuts both ways. Strangers filled our inboxes with messages, some supportive, others disgusting. Lily stopped checking her DMs after someone sent her a long rant about traditional values ending with, "Cover yourself or the devil will claim you." The worst was when a classmate pulled up her shirt collar and hissed, "Don't corrupt me, scandal queen." That night, Lily broke down, sobbing into my shoulder. I didn't want all this. I just wanted to run track and come home. My heart cracked, but I reminded her, we didn't ask for this fight. But now that it's here, we finish it. The first court hearing was set for early spring. Reporters camped outside the courthouse, cameras swiveling every time we walked in. Rosa was unfazed, striding in with her leather briefcase like she was storming a castle. Karen arrived with her lawyer, a man with slicked-back hair and a permanent smirk, carrying Karen's famous binder. She wore pearls and a smug grin, waving to the cameras like a pageant queen. Inside, the judge listened as Rosa outlined the case: harassment, defamation, abuse of authority. Karen's lawyer countered with exaggerated claims about protecting the sanctity of family neighborhoods. Then Rosa asked to admit the viral video into evidence. The judge allowed it. The courtroom watched in silence as the clip played. Armed guards, my daughter's terrified voice, Karen lurking in the background. The silence afterward was louder than any gavel. Karen fidgeted in her seat, pearls clicking against each other as she shifted. Outside, the public had already made up its mind. Protesters gathered with signs, "Free Titchy T-shirt," "HOA equals hell on anyone," and my personal favorite, "Karen, go touch grass." Comedians latched onto the story for late-night bits. A sketch on Saturday Night Live featured a character named HOA Karen, wielding a leaf blower like a weapon. The audience roared. Karen's name was cemented in the cultural dictionary. And she hated it. She tried one last play, sending out a press release claiming she was being persecuted for upholding Christian values. But by then, leaked HOA bank statements surfaced, showing she had used community funds for decorative enforcement supplies, a fancy way of saying monogrammed clipboards and custom security uniforms. The tide was fully against her. One evening, Lily came downstairs with a strange look on her face. Someone at school said I was brave. I tilted my head. How'd that feel? She smiled, tentative but real. Kinda good. Her resilience was growing in the cracks of the chaos. And I realized this wasn't just about shutting Karen down anymore. It was about reclaiming Lily's voice. By the time the second hearing was scheduled, Karen's binder had become a punchline. People made parody binders, complaints about birds, decency rules for dogs, even one labeled my issues with myself. But when Karen strode into the courthouse again, binder in tow, She looked less like a queen and more like a drowning woman clinging to flotsam. She was still dangerous, cornered people often are. But now, we weren't the only ones facing her. The entire world was watching. And that meant the final showdown was inevitable. The lawsuit was no longer just about a bra. It was about power, fear, and whether one woman's clipboard could dictate an entire neighborhood's life. And the judge was about to decide. The courthouse smelled faintly of dust and coffee, the kind of air that made time stretch. On the morning of the final hearing, the place was buzzing like a hornet's nest. Protesters waved their signs outside. Reporters loitered by the steps, mics ready. Security guards kept a watchful eye, though none of them looked thrilled about being connected to the saga of HOA Karen. Inside the courtroom, Karen sat at the defense table in a blazer so stiff it looked painful. Her lawyer shuffled papers theatrically, as if noise could disguise weakness. Across from them, Rosa tapped her pen against her legal pad, calm as a surgeon before an incision. Lily squeezed my hand under the table. Her eyes were steady. No more trembling, no more shrinking into herself. She'd been through the storm and was ready to stand in the rain. The judge entered, gavel rapping once. "Let's keep this orderly," he said, though his eyes flicked toward Karen with something like weary anticipation. Rosa began with precision. "This case is not about clothing. It is about abuse of power. About a neighbor who weaponized authority to intimidate a teenage girl. And about a community that deserves better." She called the first witness, the shorter of the two private security guards. He shifted in the witness chair, uncomfortable in a suit that clearly wasn't his usual attire. "We were told," he said, voice low, "that there was an active threat. Possible nudity. When we got there, it was just a girl in a t-shirt. It was awkward. Felt like we'd been duped." Karen's lawyer leapt up. "So you're admitting there was potential cause for concern?" The guard shook his head firmly. "No, sir. There was nothing. No cause at all. I told my supervisor afterward I wasn't comfortable taking more jobs from that client." The courtroom murmured. Next came Greg, the HOA treasurer. He clutched a folder of documents like a life raft. "Karen, she never brought these so-called rules to a vote. She just typed them up, slid them into the handbook, and told us it was settled." Karen's lawyer objected. "Speculation." Greg's hands trembled as he held up the folder. "It's not speculation. These are the drafts. Look, Rule 17. All female residents must wear brassieres when outdoors. It's in her handwriting. It was never approved. Never legal." The judge took the papers, lips pressing into a thin line. Karen's pearls clicked against each other as she shifted violently in her seat. "Decency isn't a vote. It's common sense," she snapped. "Mrs. Mitchell," the judge warned, "you will remain silent unless addressed." The gallery chuckled, stifled but loud enough to sting. Rosa wasn't finished. She brought Jamal to the stand, who calmly recounted the basketball hoop incident. Then another neighbor, who testified that Karen had once threatened fines over a provocative Halloween display that turned out to be a plastic skeleton in a lawn chair. Each story led a pattern. Karen's crusades weren't about safety. They were about control. Finally, Rosa called Lily. My chest tightened as my daughter walked to the stand, chin high. She sat, took the oath, and met the judge's eyes. "In your own words," Rosa said gently, "what happened that night?" Lily's voice was steady. "Two men with guns showed up at my house. I thought I'd done something horrible. I asked if I was in trouble. They said it was about my shirt." She paused. "I was scared. I didn't leave the house for a week after that." Rosa leaned closer. "And now?" Lily glanced toward Karen, then back at the judge. "Now I know I wasn't the problem. She was." The silence after her words was heavy, thick, and undeniable. Karen's lawyer tried to claw back ground, summoning Karen herself to the stand. She launched into a monologue about morality, slippery slopes, and protecting children from themselves. "Do you not see the danger?" she demanded. "If we allow one girl to flaunt decency, the whole fabric of community unravels." Rosa rose smoothly. Mrs. Mitchell, can you point to a single statute in your HOA bylaws that supports your claim? Karen opened her binder with a flourish, only to find the pages embarrassingly blank. The leaked emails had forced the court to strike most of her evidence as fraudulent. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. It's implied, she muttered. The judge pinched the bridge of his nose. Mrs. Mitchell, implication is not law. The closing arguments were brief. Rosa's words were sharp as glass. This is about dignity. About a girl's right to exist in her own skin without fear. About an HOA president who forgot that leadership is service, not domination. Karen's lawyer tried to salvage dignity with appeals to tradition, but the damage was done. The judge retired for deliberation. The gallery buzzed, people leaning over to whisper, reporters scribbling furiously. My husband squeezed my hand. Lily leaned against me, tired but lighter than I'd seen her in months. When the judge returned, the room fell silent. In the matter of Mitchell versus Parker, he said, the court finds the defendant. He glanced at Karen, guilty of harassment and defamation. The HOA is ordered to immediately cease all enforcement of unapproved rules, and Mrs. Mitchell will be personally liable for damages totaling $75,000. Karen gasped, clutching her pearls so hard one strand snapped, beads scattering across the floor like punctuation. The gavel struck. Case closed. The aftermath was swift. The HOA board dissolved within weeks, forced to rebuild under new leadership. Karen vanished from public view, her house put up for sale. Rumor said she'd moved in with a sister 2 states over. The memes lingered, of course. Karen's binder became shorthand online for overreaching authority. But for us, life slowly returned to normal. One evening, months later, Lily sat on the porch with a blanket around her shoulders. The sun dipped low, setting the lawns gold. She sighed, a sound of relief. I can breathe again, she said. Then, with a mischievous grin, guess I broke the neighborhood dress code. I laughed, the sound bubbling out before I could stop it. If that's the worst thing you ever break, I'll count myself lucky. We sat there together, quiet, watching the sky turn pink. No flyers on the porch. No armed guards. No clipboard-wielding shadows creeping up the street. Just peace. And for the first time in a long while, it felt permanent.